Democrats are exultant that Donald Trump had to reverse his policy of separating immigrant families at the border. And there is good reason to celebrate. The policy was mean-spirited and unnecessary. But I do wonder whether Trump's retreat will prove to be as damaging to the president as liberals think. The president's cruelty made it easy to oppose his policy. But in their delight at the Trump administration's latest missteps, Democrats may be walking into a trap. The larger question is surely, should the country enforce its immigration laws, or if circumvented, should we just give up? According to a UN report, last year, the United States became the world's leading destination for asylum seekers, with a 44% increase of Central Americans who comprised almost half the total at about 140,000. David Frum suggests in The Atlantic that most of these people probably come to escape poverty rather than violence, which is actually declining, and that many hope bringing children will help them avoid punishment. That's why when asked in 2014 about the tens of thousands of unaccompanied children who had come to the border, Hillary Clinton responded,
"We have to send a clear message. Just because your child gets across the border, that doesn't mean the child gets to stay. So we don't want to send a message that is contrary to our laws or will encourage more children to make that dangerous journey."
Immigration has become an issue that motivates a large group of Americans passionately, perhaps like no other. Some of this might be rooted in racism, but it also represents a kind of heightened nationalism. In an era of rampant globalization, people want to believe that they still maintain some sense of stability and control. Nationalism has been around for centuries, but it is now, in a sense, the last doctrine standing. The great story of the 20th century was the loss of faith. Between the ascendance of science, socialism, and secularism, people lost their ability to put their trust in the dogmas and duties of religion. But this didn't change the reality that people wanted something they could believe in, something with which they could have a deep emotional bond. Nationalism has increasingly become that substitute, being endowed with a strong and almost mystical attachment. And immigration has become the litmus test of nationalism, perhaps because other sources have faded or become politically unmentionable. As Western societies became more diverse and as minority groups within them asserted their own identities, it became more difficult to define nationalism by ethnic or religious terms. So what is left? How does one define a nation? For Americans, political ideas and ideology have always been at the heart of nationalism. That's why being a communist could be thought of as un-American. But beyond ideology, there has always been, even in America, a more emotional conception of the nation. And immigration has become a proxy for that gut feeling, the sense that the country must be able to define itself, choose whom it will allow to come in, and privilege its own citizens over foreigners. In politics, people remember a few simple things. To illustrate that point, a pollster in the 1980s once told me a story. A focus group asked a man whom he would vote for in the 1984 elections, Ronald Reagan or his Democratic opponent, Walter Mondale. Reagan, the man replied. Mondale is a communist. The pollster explained that this wasn't actually true. The man replied, well, maybe. I'll still vote for Reagan. One thing I know, nobody's ever thought he was a communist. Donald Trump might have lost this round, but no one will ever think he's soft on illegal immigration.